that was quick and efficient.
Yeah, it's because I use what is called a bottle opener.
Yeah.
It is specifically made to open bottles.
Well, take a sip. Tell me what you think.
I will take a sip of this Firestone Hopnosis IPA from Firestone Walker.
So the casino actually bought this beer for me.
Ooh, that's delicious.
Yeah.
The casino bought it for you?
Yeah, let me just tell you a little story.
Oh, yeah, because you were in...
Yeah,
in Wendover.
No, we went to St. George to visit my parents for the 4th of July weekend. And I'm not much of a gambler. I was just like, we were doing so many activities that I just needed time to get away from the family. So we went to Mesquite.
Activities.
We went to a buffet, which was underwhelming. Like,
I don't go to a buffet in Mesquite.
Yeah, you got to just go to Vegas.
There's certain things you just don't do.
Yeah, it was underwhelming, right? It was $25, not a huge deal. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go back home yet. So I took out $125 from the ATM. I gave my girlfriend $100, okay? And I'm like, here, go ahead and just spend this on whatever slot machine you want. Because, she doesn't know the games like I do. Like, I wanted her to play craps, and she was like, no. And she lost it within like 5 minutes. Like, no joke.
That'll happen.
I'm like, this is why I don't gamble. It's just a total waste of money. So
you just donated $100.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And I was like, you know what? I might as well donate the last 20. So I walk over to the roulette table, and I've always wanted to do this, but I've just never, I've never wanted to lose $20, but I'm in a good spot. It's not going to hurt me. And I'm like, here's $20, put it on 4. And the entire time I'm just telling Christine, I'm like, we're going to lose the money. We're donating to this casino. I'm like, once we lose the money, let's just go ahead and go home. We had a good time, whatever. And I'm not even watching the roulette wheel, right? I bet 4
you just
because
already counted your loss.
4 is my birthday, and that's why I've always wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Right? March 4th. And all of a sudden, I hear the guy go 4. It landed on 4, and I look over, and I just start laughing. I just can't help it because the odds of that hitting on a roulette wheel, there's like 37 numbers, and it pays 1 to 35. So, again, the odds are if 40 people go and play, maybe one of them will win.
Yeah.
1.05.
Maybe.
And I'm like, the guy doesn't even know the odds. He looks to the person next to him. He's like, how much is that? Guy's like $700. I was like, oh God. So they paid me out $700. I went to, a couple places, shopped a little bit, and drove back to St. George.
There you go. Did you spend all $700?
No. It just paid for the trip.
Yeah.
Gas is expensive.
Oh, gas is stupid. Yeah, so typically when I go gambling, like me and my brother a couple of years ago, same thing, we were in Mesquite, we were in that little, I don't remember what it's called. It's like that big casino next to Terrible's, little McDonald's one.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what the fucking name of it is.
I don't know it.
But anyway, so I took 50, he took 50, and I'm like, look, we play with this, we just recycle. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I got up to like 180, and we just kind of recycled and kept playing. And we were just there for the fun of it, just, doing $1 here, $1 there. And we played for probably 2.5, 3 hours, and then it was gone. Yeah. I should have just quit, but, it was $50.
It's entertainment at some point. You just hope not to lose it within 10 minutes.
You're like, I put 100 on this.
I couldn't
you
believe.
Lose. All right.
We lost that much money on the slot machine. I was like, wow, that was underwhelming.
But you didn't actually lose. You walked away with some.
Yeah.
And it paid for this amazingly delicious beer.
Yum. All right, guys. Topic tonight. So we are going to jump back into 411 episodes. One of my favorite topics.
It's been a minute.
Basically, disappearances discovered by David Paulides that were mysterious, and he set up like profiles to like how do you track what disappearances are relevant and strange. And we'll be talking about 3 good cases on that.
You got 3 of them.
Yeah.
All right. And I, of course, just as kind of some filler stuff, I looked on Reddit to find scary stories from hunters. So while they're out hunting, some scary shit they encountered.
That's so funny that you picked that because hunters is a subset of people that go missing that fall under this category that we're going to go over real quick.
It's like they see the doe that they want to kill and they follow it deep into unknown territory and then they're lost.
Dude, here's a theory I have, right? Because the thing about David Paulides is he just covers the data. He wrote a bunch of books about it. He has a profile of the variables that happen when people go missing. But he never says like what's causing it. Here's my speculation, right? Here's my answer to all the missing person cases.
To all of them, every single one of them.
Yeah. People saw something they shouldn't. And I don't know what they saw, but they saw something they shouldn't, and therefore, just like Old Yeller, someone had to put them down.
Yeah. Rough.
Rough.
I mean, you could be onto something. That might go along with one of our conspiracy theory iceberg things. But, we did actually cover in the conspiracy theory iceberg that a lot of the missing people, they're actually being pulled into Agartha, or the Middle Earth, to battle T-Rexes with Hitler.
Yeah, goddamn Hitler. We'll get him.
So
yet.
I think both of those are pretty equally as possible.
Okay, well, so let's jump into the variables that David Paulides uses to figure out if this is a 411 case. So there's a lot of
his
them.
codes.
Yeah.
Like a very specific Dexter code that he follows.
Yeah, it's like filters, right? So if someone gets eaten by animals, it was animals, right? That's what made them disappear.
Unless it was a human. Unless it was a pack of cannibals.
But there's just similar cases where there's similar variables of when people disappeared that are baffling. So let's jump into it. The first variable is people who go missing usually do so in national parks, around large bodies of water, or nearby boulder fields, specifically granite.
Granite?
Isn't that weird?
Huh.
It just seems like weird data. I don't know.
So whenever you're walking through a nice kitchen, you see a granite countertop, you're like, ooh.
They're going to get me, the elves, the clockwork elves. I took DMT.
I might go missing here soon. This counter's so damn nice, this granite.
All right, number 2. People from both ends of the intellectual spectrum go missing. So it's in the extremes. So people who have intellectual divergencies or disabilities go missing, as well as individuals who are like career scientists. So what we're looking at is, if you're to look at the IQ range, you're looking at people, maybe under 85 and people above 125. So at least a deviation in both directions.
So that killer clown, Ed Gein, he'd be missing?
Yeah, dude, he was not a smart dude, and he was a killer dude.
He was a clown.
Number 3, people from both ends of the physical spectrum go missing. So people who are physically disabled and cannot walk long distances, as well as people who live extremely active lives and are very fit.
So everybody.
To me, when I read this, no, not at all. So again, we're looking at
only the extremes, no one in between.
We're looking at the outer edges of deviations. To me, it's almost like someone's trying to take them as a specimen.
Okay.
Right? Like if you have a specific disease, or if you're just a perfect specimen, something is taking them.
So this kind of goes against your theory. So maybe they're not seeing something they shouldn't see. Maybe they're just the specimen they're looking for, and they're like, hey, you match what we're looking for, so you're going to come with me.
Maybe it's both. I don't know. So 4, if the missing individual is found alive, they usually have memory loss about the entire event. Children sometimes tell weird stories about how they went missing.
Aliens.
One case is where a toddler went missing on a rather cold night, but somehow survived. She claimed a wolf fed her berries from the palm and its of its hands, and that's how she survived. So
Sounds like some Red Riding Hood shit.
That's bizarre. It kind of seems like the wolf had human hands. The way I see that.
It was a werewolf.
Maybe.
It was the Wendigo.
5. If the missing individual is found deceased, the cause of death is almost never determined, often seeming as though they died without a cause at all. Medical examiners usually write down that they died from exposure, if they do not have a better answer to give.
That's just such a cop-out reason. Oh, how did they die? Exposure. They were exposed.
But you have to think about it. Like, examiners are kind of pressured to give a cause of death.
Especially if they think it's a murder case.
Well, just like if a family wants to know, right? Because, obviously, if it's murder, you're going to see marks. But if you just find someone that's just dead, there's no internal damage on the inside or the outside, like, what happened? And at that point, they just rule exposure. So 6, the missing are found in areas that seem difficult, if not impossible, to reach by foot, or in the time that has lapsed.
How did you end up on the other side of that mountain ridge in just 10 minutes?
Dude, there's so many stories, even with kids. Like, it gets nuts. So, for example, such as a child being found 12,000 feet away in just a matter of hours. A common example is a child as young as 2 or 3 going missing and being found high in elevation, such as mountains 2,000 feet in the air. Sometimes children have their clothes on backwards or inside out, and their parents claim that they can't even dress themselves yet. Like I was watching David Paulides actually like talk to a crowd, and he's just like, imagine if you're 3 years old and you get lost from your parents in the wood. Would you walk downhill or uphill? He's like, everyone's going to walk downhill because that's the path of least resistance. Yet here's a story of a 2 or 3 year old that walked up a 2,000-foot mountain pass and like died. And it's like, there's no way that kid went there. It's crazy. Like, who took that kid? 7. The missing are found in an area that has been searched by the search and rescue teams numerous times over a period of days, usually a week or longer. Sometimes they're even found on the trail that is used to access the area they're searching, almost as if they're placed there intentionally in order to surely be found by search and rescue. Search and rescue teams are meticulous about their searches. They map it out as a grid. I've heard so many stories where they talk about how they searched this place 9 times. And on the 9th time, they were just there, and they died the day before. It's fucking weird. Mm-hmm. So, 9. The shoes tend to go missing, either just one or both. Many people are found in bizarre places at high altitudes or in tough terrain, and their socks or the soles of their feet don't have a speck of dirt or wear on them. This is true for children, too. What do you think about when you think of feet? Or not feet, but shoes.
What do you think when you think of feet?
Like shoes. What do you think about shoes when you're out in the mountains?
Well, they're used for protection. You wouldn't want to ditch them.
Well, here's what I think. They're dirty. So if you were to grab someone and put them in an environment where you can't maybe have germs, or you're afraid of the germs that the subject has, you might take off their feet. Or sorry,
you might just chop off their feet.
You might take off their shoes.
No, you might chop off their feet too.
Just chop off the feet.
You better crawl down this mountain, boy.
10. Search and rescue dogs are unable to pick up a scent, or if they are, they'll follow it a few feet and then begin acting bizarrely. They'll circle and then sit down. This is not a common behavior of SAR canines. SAR meaning search and rescue. 11. Investigators do not find any tracks 9 times out of 10. If they do, they seem to stop inexplicably and lead to nowhere, as if the person just vanished into thin air. Animals' attacks are ruled out by the experts. And then the last thing is Paulides will not investigate a case where an individual has a known history of mental illness. You usually won't investigate cases where there's a likelihood that this person left or disappeared by their own account.
Like, this guy's always running off into the woods. Okay, well, I'm not going to look into it then.
Well, I mean, it would make sense. Like, if you're depressed and, like, you want to disappear, like, the National Forest might be a good place to do it, You're like, hey, I'm going to be here, and you just, go to Mexico. And then the last thing is there seems to be a subset of individuals that are disappeared, as it were. And these 3 people are hunters, berry pickers, and photographers. So can you think of anything that would be similar that those people do in the woods?
Well, they go very deep away from other people.
Okay, so you would say that they go off trail. That's a good one, right?
Yeah, because you're not going to photograph a heavily used trail. You're going to go way off into the off-beaten path.
Yeah, hunters want to go to remote places. Berry pickers, it's actually berry pickers and mushroom pickers, so I apologize. They'll want to go off trail to go to a specific place to pick mushrooms or berries.
The wildest mushrooms are deeper in the forest.
And again, I don't know 100%, but I would think that if I was picking a berry or if I was taking a photograph, you're not very aware of your surroundings. So, I feel like something could sneak up on you. The thing is, they've ruled out predation because these people just vanished into thin air. There's no, explanation. There's no, body parts left over. Sorry, that sounds dark. No blood or anything, just gone.
Yeah.
So it's really strange. And so what we'll talk about is 3 specific stories that are fairly famous of people disappearing, again, within thin air. Before we jump into it, Britton, let's jump into your hunter stories.
Oh, man. All right. So I looked through a couple of them. There's not really a lot of, paranormal stuff, but, just wild, unexplainable things. So this one comes from Hollier or whatever. Pig hunting in the bush in Jenolan, NSW in Australia. Me and my mate were stalking 2 pigs, merrily degrading a riverbank. These fucking things are environmental poison to waterways. Anyway, we were downwind and totally still, about 30 meters away in the brush, about to take our shots with our 308s, when the 2 pigs absolutely piss-bolt away. We literally just stand up and shake our heads. No clue what scared them away. I've never seen a pig go from 0 to full flight without a gunshot first. Anyway, we're pretty buggered and decide to pack it in. Just as we're walking back through some pretty thick pine forest, maybe 100 meters away from the hide we lost the pigs, we both hear a growl. I swear to God, it sounded like a lion from an African movie. There is nothing in the Australian bush that makes that sound. Nothing at all. I've never felt fear like that in my entire life. Then I realize no birdsong nearby, and we're pretty damn close to the evening chorus time. So it's that crazy absolute silence.
Yeah. You hear about that sometimes in 411 cases where there's some type of super predator that's around. It just gets quiet.
Right. So we're standing around for 5 minutes. Rifles out in the falling light. No birds. Before we decide to head back to the fire trail, I parked my ute at 30 minutes walk in the dusk, rifles out, jumping every time a cocky shrieks. I still don't know what that sound was, but I will never forget how primally afraid it made us, like evolution had programmed us to engadine our underpants when hearing it. I don't know all this Australian slang.
It's talk from the outback, eh?
I have not hunted that area since, and that was in 2006. I would shit my pants, dude.
I just go out to my walkout balcony with my big knife.
He said
I'm gonna
that perfectly.
I stab a kangaroo.
No, I wouldn't mess with a kangaroo.
Dude, they're ripped.
You'd
They're
die.
jacked bastards.
You would die if
Yeah.
you tried to fuck with a kangaroo. Okay, so this is from Glum Hedgehog, and it's kind of a follow-up to the same story. I have a growl story as well, but I wasn't hunting. I was about 5 at my grandparents' house, which was pretty rural, surrounded by woods and farms. It had just got fully dark out there, but they had a few lights in their yard, which was huge, dotted with huge old oak trees, and I was just bopping around doing whatever kids do. This would be around 1998-99 in Texas. Nothing good happens in Texas.
I love Texas.
You been to Texas?
No, but my sister lives there.
You haven't even been to Texas and your sister lives there?
Yeah, one day
What
I'll
kind of
visit.
brother are you?
There's a total solar eclipse showing up there, so I'm going.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I wandered over to the far edge of the yard, right outside of where the lights could reach, under one of the big trees, and something in that tree growled at me like I've never heard before. It was 15 feet up in the air, and it did not sound like a dog. I remember freezing and being too scared to move for what felt like a long time, but was probably just a couple of seconds. And then I backed up a few feet before I turned and freaking sprinted across the yard to the porch as fast as my little legs could go. Bad idea. I don't know how it didn't chase me and rip my throat out. I ran in and told the adults, "There's a jaguar outside," because that's what it sounded like to my little brain, but no one believed it. About 10 years later, my dad is telling me stories about growing up in that house and how at night in the summer you'd hear the shrieks of a mountain lion that migrated up the creek behind the house every year. One also got in their goat pen one night when he was young, and he accidentally got in with it. That would be terrible.
Yeah, those things can kill
Murders
you
your goats.
quick.
I'm 100% convinced that growl was a mountain lion trying to keep me away from that tree for whatever reason. Maybe it had a cub with it or food or something. Something recently hit one with a car not far from there, so they're in the area. So this comes from our good friend Deleted. Young hunter, second time out, sitting in a tree stand with my uncle. To paint the picture, our stand was near the bottom left of this acre of land, and we had 2 acres visible, one right in front of us and another to our right, which was mostly visible from the tree stand. It was about 2 or 3 hours and waiting for some deer to show up. We had heard a lot of different animals, turkeys, foxes, all kinds of birds, and of course, squirrels. Very exciting for me. Eventually, at the opposite end of the acre, a small deer came out of the tree line. I had my gun ready just in case, but my uncle signaled me to let it go. He later explained that it would be an extremely hard shot even for him, and also the deer was fairly small, maybe a year old. So I just watched this cute deer munch away on the ground and wag its little white tail for a few minutes. My uncle and I shared a smile. I was so surprised that our tree stand really worked. Bam! Out of nowhere, a bear lunges from the brush and absolutely annihilates this young deer, dead instantly, and pulls it back into the brush. All that motion and power took less than 3 seconds. Good Lord.
That's why in the woods you need to be very careful.
I was in absolute awe. Even replaying it now in my head, I still just think to myself, what the fuck? I was shocked, terrified, and amazed / excited at all the same time. My uncle thought he had the classic look of fear, probably because I was so young and was there with him, but it was jarring regardless. Not only are bears extremely rare in my area, this is one of 3 times I've ever seen a bear, but the fact that this huge bear was patrolling around or hiding unseen and unheard to either of us was just mind-boggling.
It's scary to think about, just the fact that some super predator could be really close and you don't see it.
I think about 30 minutes later, my uncle decided it's time for us to leave. We get down, pack up our gear in the bed of the truck. He starts it up, and I'm walking around the back, taking my sweet time. Stretched and let that sun hit my face and cool air in my lungs. I don't remember exactly why, but my eyes were just fixated in one area. As if my brain knew it was seeing something, but it wasn't fully processing what. Suddenly, the mood in the air changed, and that cool air felt dull. I sensed something was wrong and started to turn around and walk to the passenger car door, but I didn't take my eyes off this part of the tree line. Just before I got in, that same bear poked its head out from behind the brush. It was far away, but I could tell its mouth was covered in blood. It just stared. I closed the door and continued to look at it from the back window of the truck. My uncle noticed and looked as well. This time we were both just flat out scared. Never seen or heard anything like that since, but it was a good lesson understanding that you need to be alert and on your toes when in that kind of situation 100% of the time. The bear was like a ghost, but hundreds of pounds. If it only took 3 seconds to kill a deer and I saw that same bear, I'd be like dropping to my knees, doing a big old prayer.
Yeah, I could literally murder you in the woods pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know, you might get a good punch on it. Just kidding.
Punch a bear in the face.
I've heard some stories like of people like getting attacked by bears. Like if they want to kill you, like even if you have a gun, you're probably gonna die.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just feel like if you're in the wilderness and you see this big massive mountain lion or a bear, or like you see a hippo, you're dead.
Hippos kill a lot of people.
Yeah. A lot of people.
They're aggressive little bastards.
They're not little, dude. They're aggressive big bastards.
All right. The first 411 story. The first four. What the hell? Am I going through puberty?
The first.
Stop. The first story we will cover happened in Alberta, Canada. Anton Cahoot was 70 years old when he went missing on August 3rd, 1944. He lived in Coleman, Alberta, a remote section of Canada. Anton decided to go out with some friends to pick berries around York Creek, which he knew like the back of his hand, as he grew up in this remote section. Anton spoke French and broken English. During the afternoon, they were berry picking when he got separated from the rest of the pickers. Once his friends noticed his disappearance, his friends searched through the late afternoon and evening, but couldn't find him. His group said he was right behind them, picking berries, and just disappeared, right in thin air. Out of desperation, they called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is the RCMP. The RCMP brought in the most famous dog when it came to tracking people on August 8th, over 5 days after he disappeared. Authorities were shocked when the dog couldn't even pick up a scent in the area Anton had previously been. His wife brought up that at certain times, due to Anton's age, he would have memory lapses, but didn't have dementia. He was last reported seen wearing a long-sleeve sweater and dark pants. There was a 5-day search and rescue mission, and they found nothing. Anton was never found. The 411 points in this missing case would be berry picking, had a point of separation from the group, was near water, and a canine couldn't pick up the scent, and the trackers couldn't find any of his tracks.
It fits all the pieces.
Where did Anton go? Nobody knows. He's never been found to this day.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is, it happened like 70 years ago. No, it's almost 80 years. No body, man. He's gone. So, like, just imagine
What
that.
if he just came walking out now? He's like, what? How old was he when he went missing?
No, he's dead. He's long. He'd be 150.
Oh,
He's gone.
I thought, okay, yeah,
He's
no.
gone to greener pastures. But here's the thing,
He
right?
walks out at 150 years old.
They talk about this. Like, either someone goes in front of the group and they lose, like, eyesight and they're just gone. Or the opposite happens where, like, someone just falls behind and they can't see him, immediately disappears.
Just tie everyone together.
So this is a really short story, but just an interesting one. It's the points, and yeah, it's gone.
So the case in point is be in the middle of the group. Don't fall behind. Don't go ahead. Just stay with the group.
Well, I think a good case would be because they're berry picking, right? Here's what I would do: if you believe this stuff, and there's literally evidence that this happens, you would probably always want to talk to someone, even if you can't see them, so they can tell if you disappear, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm picking berries, but you just talk to the other person picking berries.
Yeah.
That way, if something happens to you, they immediately notice,
Stop mid-sentence. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, shit.
right? You know something's up.
Or it goes
Because
deathly quiet.
if you're just sitting there, like, picking berries or, like, mushrooms, you might not look at someone for 5 minutes.
Right.
And then they're less likely to figure out, like, what happened to them.
Especially if you're on like a really good roll and you're like this huge berry bush and you're just following along deeper and deeper off the course and people are just keep walking. You're like, oh, these are some good berries. Gone.
You imagine it, you implement the system, and you just hear your friend, like, stop mid-sentence, you look up, and there's a giant thunderbird carrying your, like, person away. Oh my God! That's a 20-foot wingspan thunderbird.
Like, man, like a Thunderbird car just
No.
peels out.
You've heard of the thunderbird, right?
Yeah.
It's like a Native American creature they used to talk about that would fly the skies of North America.
It's like a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's actually pretty creepy. This one comes from Tap Them Out. I don't know if that's sexual or like hateful.
Sometimes you just gotta tap it.
Just gotta tap it out. It's like a poop. North of Atlanta, deer hunting. I headed to a WMA in northern Georgia. I had only had a short time to scout the area, but I had a basic, inexperienced plan to go in early and follow a game trail to where it looked like it crossed a river. My plan was to sit quietly until the early morning deer began to move. I arrived at around 4 a.m., got my basic gear loaded, and began my hike to the game trail with no light except a headlamp. Man, I'm not doing anything at 4 a.m. but sleeping. These people that get up and go like jogging and hunting at 4 a.m., like, just stop.
I'm convinced they're not people.
They're not. I didn't think that the world existed at that hour. I just thought like the whole simulation just ended.
That's what I was thinking. They're part of the simulation. They're like a non-playable
They
character.
have to be. And they enjoy it too. They wake up, they're like, oh man, I slept in. It's like 4:15 a.m. Jesus. When I got to where a few game trails converged near the river crossing, I looked for cover and found an old rocky foundation of some kind with stacked rocks and brush providing ample cover. I set up inside the roughly formed area provided by the rock and vegetation. After about 90 minutes, it was legal hunting hours. The safety's coming off.
Hell yeah.
I continued to wait, but as the daylight got brighter, I noticed a lot of things around me. I was working as a lineman at the same time, and I noticed a yellow tape trampled down on the ground in a few places. The area was very wet, and the yellow tape was covered in dirt and mud. It was similar to the tape we used to keep people out of hazard areas and off our trailers when they were in use. I noticed the remnants of paint on the ground, nearly missing lines, similar to what was left when underground utility locations were painted weeks ago. At about 7:45 a.m., I hadn't seen a single sign of deer movement, so I decided to move a bit further into the area. As I got up, I realized I was sitting in what appeared to be a small stone area that was built as a hut or fort or cabin of some type. The ground had a thin slab, and stone was piled up making walls. Some were knocked down ages ago, some were in decent shape. I walked up to the road that was about 100 feet from where I was sitting. When I got to the road, I saw a display of colorful objects. I walked over to the display, and it was a 3-foot tall by 4-foot wide pile of stuffed animals. It had been raining off and on all week, and the toy stuffed animals were all soaking wet, covered in splashed up dirt and mud, and looking horrible. Affixed to a tree above the stuffed animals was a barely legible sign that was streaked in the rain. It was a memorial for a child that had been murdered in these woods. My mind raced as I realized that the tape on the ground was a police line tape and the paint was likely designating the position of the body. I was completely freaked out. I was kneeling at the exact location of a murder scene, or at least where the body was recovered. Hunting was over for the day. I had the shivers randomly for the next few hours. That'd do it. Just a pile of stuffed animals in the middle of the woods. You're like, yeah, it's time to go.
I'd probably leave.
This is exactly why you don't wake up at 4 a.m.
What if you heard one like squeeze, like and had a squeeze toy in it?
It's like, mama.
Like, who squeezed that stuffed animal? All right, the second 411 case. Ed Gross. Ed Gross was a 46-year-old when he went missing October 4th, 1931. He was a deer hunter who had strong ties in his remote town as he owned a gas station in Kelso, Washington. He decided to go out for a hunt with his two friends, Leo Tomani and Herbert Coulter. They arrived out in the woods on Friday, October 2nd, and started hunting together on Saturday. Sunday, on October 4th, they split up and agreed to come back to their campsite at dusk. Once dusk arrived, Herbert and Leo arrived back at camp, but Ed never showed up. To his two friends, this seemed strange. How could Ed get lost? They described Ed and many other newspaper publications as one of the most experienced woodsmen in that region of the state of Washington. Leo and Herbert, knowing it's dark, they went to bed, but in the morning when Ed wasn't there, they got up and started searching for him for the entire day. At this time, the two friends aren't that worried. They think Ed may have found some hiding spot and is still hunting and will eventually be found without a problem. However, after not finding him for 2 days, they panicked and called the sheriff on October 6th and reported him missing. Soon after, on October 7th, they launched a wide-scale search operation with over 50 searchers looking for Ed. Again, Ed had strong ties to the community, so people flocked to this area to help find him. He worked at a gas station, so when people heard that he just disappeared, they're like, you know what? I'm going to put on my boots and we're going to go ahead and look for him. Coincidentally, on October 7th, when the search operation happened, it was Ed's 47th birthday.
What?
Right, isn't that strange? While out searching, they heard 2 shots fired near a place called Fawn Lake. It is important to note that if you're lost in the woods and need help, you should fire 3 shots in an inconsistent progression to signal you need help.
Coo, cuckoo.
Searchers immediately moved to that area, but still can't find a trace of Ed. Out of desperation, the sheriff brings in 2 bloodhounds on the scene to assist with the search. At the same time, Miss Gross posted a $300 reward, trying to get more people to come out and search in that area. Again, we're looking at 1931, so $300 is a lot of money. The next day, on October 8th, the most famous search dog in Seattle arrived to assist with the case. Everyone now is getting really desperate to find Ed, as it was estimated that he only had about a day of food rations and water, and would be experiencing extreme hunger and thirst at this point. The window of finding Ed alive would be shrinking at a fast pace. On October 9th, 40 more searchers showed up to look for Ed, either motivated by his community ties or for the $300 reward put up by Mrs. Ed.
It's all about the money.
Maybe. They ended up finding tracks in the Green River and Turtle River area. They abruptly, however, disappeared after a few steps, and canines couldn't pick up Ed's scent after they stopped either. After 4 grueling weeks of searching, they called it off and Ed was never found. Some oddities of his disappearance was that Ed and his friends were hunting by Mount St. Helens prior to the volcano going off. Right, we need to age that. But which means that he had a clear marker of where he should have been, which only made his disappearance more puzzling. Now, before Mount St. Helens went off, it was actually surrounded by thick forests, and these forests had strange folklore stories surrounding them at the time. These included Bigfoot sightings, strange unexplained sounds, and other disappearance cases. So what happened to this person? Well, nobody knows. And you think about it, it's not just some random guy who just got some boots and went into the forest. This guy, for his whole life, was in that area. Knew that place like the back of his hands. There's clear markers that he could go to or that could help him navigate back to civilization. But
It's just the last person you would think that would go missing.
yeah, and it almost seems strange that someone fired 2 shots in that area. It almost seems like maybe they were calling for help, but something stopped them.
Or he stumbled across something he shouldn't see, and those 2 shots were in his face. Okay. Think you'll like this one. This one comes from Bob and Min. This is a little weird, but a good story. Grouse hunting last year, early in the year. We went to a trail we'd hit the year before, as we were new to the area and still exploring. Turns out they clear-cut the entire thing. There's no more woods there. We're still in a state forest, so we hop back in the car and decide, screw it, let's just park here and wander around in the woods. Mind you, there are no trails, no parking spots, no cars, no signage, no houses for miles. We're out in the middle of nowhere between Duluth and Ely, Minnesota. We're probably coming up on a mile into the woods, just bursting with our GPS so we don't die, and a friggin' dog runs out in front of me. I'm thinking, what in the hell is there a dog out here for? That's when I hear this goofy sound. That was terrible. It was definitely a human vocalization, but not a word or anything like that. I got a little nervous and start walking up the crest of this small hill. First thing I noticed is a shotgun leaning against the tree. Then this guy's blaze orange on the ground. Oh. Dude was like grunting on the ground. I thought he was seriously hurt or something.
He's taking a poo.
Nope. I get close enough to realize this dude is just going to town on himself in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, I'd leave so fast.
Oh, I was getting... Yeah, I walked in on a dude jerking it, miles from anything. No idea how far this guy had to walk, but again, no cars. I got the hell out of there after that. No birds were shot.
Wow.
I mean, look, if you really want privacy, just go out into the woods. Guy just, threw this dog's, ball, miles away. He's like, you go over there for a while. Don't come back for,
You go get it, goddammit.
Don't come back for 2.5 minutes.
Me and Jill got a date.
Jill, here's my left.
Okay, so the last 411 disappearance case, and it's one of my favorites because it's so bizarre. Buckle up, everyone.
Oh, I'm buckled.
So, Joe Carter. Joe Carter is a very famous missing person case that is over 32 years old. Joe went missing on May 21st, 1950 at 3 p.m. on the side of Mount St. Helens. So another Mount St. Helens case. Prior to the explosion of Mount St. Helens, people would often climb it for recreational fun during the winter and ski down. Joe fell into this category, and people referred to him as an expert-level skier and was a member of the National Ski Patrol. This group is one of the most advanced, trained, and experienced skiers that patrol the mountains on resorts where people ski. One day, Joe went to climb Mount St. Helens with 20 other people. They all reached the summit of the mountain and were getting ready to ski down. It is important to note that Joe was also a photographer, and he told the group that the way they were going down, they would need to pass a glacier and go around a specific turn. And he would set up a camera right around that turn, and he would photograph the people as they came down.
It's like, as you turn around this bend, give me a big old 2 thumbs up.
That's cool, man. This is before ski lifts, and he's like, let's just get a nice snapshot of you, and yeah, he seems like a good dude, you know?
Too bad he's gonna go missing.
Yeah, and it's crazy, dude. This is the most bizarre case you'll ever hear. So to get these shots, Joe went first and skied around the corner and was supposedly setting up his camera to catch those first camera shots of the skiers. It, however, became apparent that something went wrong when the skiers went around this corner and Joe was nowhere to be found. They also stopped and looked around, and they found that it appeared that the snow had some indentations where Joe stopped and started to set up the camera. They found empty film canisters, meaning that he had his camera out and was in the process of loading his camera when something happened. They found Joe's ski tracks going off a cliff into a canyon, hundreds of feet below. These tracks indicated that Joe would have been in a state of extreme distress as he did not slow down at all during his descent. His group ended up calling search and rescue, and the people went up and witnessed the evidence described, and they said that what he did was a wild death-defying run. They said he jumped over 3 crevasses, and one story said he went straight off a cliff into what is called Ape Canyon. Other people said he went right to the edge of Ape Canyon and just went off. Most articles said that he was skiing for his life. Search and rescue focused their search in the canyon, hundreds of feet below of where Joe was last said to be. Dozens of people were in this canyon at this point looking for his body. However, no skis were ever found, and they never found Joe. No tracks were ever found in the canyon in the 10-day search and rescue mission. People remarked that it seemed like Joe was running away from something and must have been in a panic, but that begs the question of what could have scared this 32-year-old man, expert skier, so much to take his own life and go over that cliff.
Because if he was being pursued and chased from something, there would be other tracks.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
It wouldn't just be like his ski tracks blazing down the mountain off a cliff.
Yeah, so exactly, because of the lack of animal tracks, whatever scared Joe would have to be something in the air, not touching the ground. What could this be? Who knows?
Thunderbird again.
Another interesting note is one searcher in Ape Canyon reported feeling extremely uncomfortable while searching and feeling like he was being watched. It's also bizarre that his body was never found, as the water in the creek in the canyon was not high enough to wash his body away. Could it have been some horrific aerial force that he was running from that took him away, skis and camera and everything else? Maybe Joe took a picture of something he shouldn't have. Criteria that make this a 411 case was he was a photographer, landed near a creek of water, and was never found. There was also that point of separation. Isn't that fucking bizarre, man?
It was like a tornado he was running from.
So the thing is, he would only go down that cliff knowing that the probability of him surviving is like less than 5%. So if he went down there, he saw something fucking scary that made him like go right down it. Like, what was he running from? Like, that just drives me crazy.
So the last story I'll read comes from World's Largest Army. One morning in high school, I went duck hunting alone. Smart. I had a fairly long walk to the pond through woods with no underbrush and trees that were fairly spread out. I had on my chest waders, carrying my shotgun and a flashlight, a shell bag, and a bag of decoys. After I walked a little ways, I started hearing someone following me, about 20 feet behind. I turned around, but nobody was there. It creeped me out. Every time I took a step, he did too. So naturally, I stopped and threw in 3 shotgun shells, looked around with my flashlight, and I yelled out, "Dude, you're not going to take me." I stood there for a few minutes looking around, but he didn't make a move. I even considered a ghost. Since I couldn't see anyone and my options were running out, I started walking again, and so did he. Ghost, whatever. So I picked up the pace a little bit, but so did he. I got to the pond, threw out my decoys, and hunkered into the brush. When daybreak happened, I started looking around me more than I was looking for ducks flying past. Then, the sun came up, and I noticed a string wrapped around my left foot. So I unwrapped the string and pulled in the 20 or so feet of string and found a 2-foot-long stake tied to the string. I felt like a fucking idiot. That is the scariest feeling, though, being followed. Like, especially if if they're matching your pace.
Oh, yeah, man.
It's terrible.
That's what predators do.
In the middle of the woods, like in the middle of this pond, you're like duck hunting alone, bright and early, 4 a.m. when everyone else is asleep. It's not a good feeling, man.
Yeah. Maybe the ducks are hunting you.
It's a manhunt. From the ducks. All right, well, that wraps up our episode of 411 Cases and Crazy Things in the Wilderness. And as we do wrap up, as always, we do ask you, the listeners, to send in your suggestions for topics and even feedback, anything you want us to cover. entertheabysspod@gmail.com.
And if you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. We're only 10% away from 200 subs, which is pretty neat.
That's amazing.
Yeah, very excited to reach that milestone.
I feel like it was just like yesterday we were talking about almost hitting 100. We're almost at 200.
I predicted us hitting 200 before the end of the year, so make it happen.
please, and thank you. Make it happen, damn it.
Well, as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.